Hello all, and welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 95 for April 28, 2023. I am Dale Warner, head of support for Plant an App, and I'll be your host for this next hour. This is an event that we do every Friday this hour, and it's an opportunity to get together to share our experiences around Plant an App and low code, and everyone is welcome. These episodes are recorded and put out on our YouTube channel, so all the past episodes are out there. You can find and learn a great deal from these past episodes. youtube.com/plantanap, and you can subscribe to that so you know when we post new ones. We'll run this agenda today. The first one is just to say hello, and then we'll do first call and a variety of other things. But first call will be all about opportunity to say what's going on with you and perhaps any help that we might be able to provide. But do jump in, show and tell, raise your hand, just get into the discussion. We will go for about an hour and then turn off the recording and go into our afterglow segment. So feel free to hang around for that. That's just a more informal and less recorded time. Sometimes we raise a virtual beverage, even though it's still early here in Central Time US. But yeah, good time and opportunity to get to know people. So do join us for that. Very few guidelines to this. Be nice, and if you've got noise going on behind you, then please mute. You can submit questions and topics in advance. Here's a QR code that will let you do that, but there's also links in the emails that we send to you. If you let us know in advance, we can prepare a little bit and at least put you on the agenda. So with that, good morning. Hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Anthony, twice in a row. Wow.
Morning, all. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Having a crazy bout of insomnia. Anthony is joining us.
Yeah, I found a little bit of a.
Well, good. We are on first call. What's on your mind? What's going on?
I've got a quick thing. I've been looking at speed of sites, and I load up a page, and I could have like 140 requests to the server just for the page to load up. Like with all the JavaScript and CSS files, is that going to affect the page speeds having so many requests, or can we combine some of these into the one file?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think you might be cutting out a little bit, but I got the gist of your question. It is there's a lot of when you have a DNN page and you're loading it up, and I don't know, I assume you have some modules on the page that are there, and you're saying there's a lot of files that get requested from the server. That's your basic question, right? Is it efficient? Can it be faster?
Yeah.
So
Yes, and some of the things being sent, say with the form, you may not be using some of the components, but it's still sending or having to load up some of the JavaScript for, say, the drop-down menu or the drop-down calendar, which you may not need to use. Can you turn some of these off so it's not having to process or render?
So I have a little bit of information about this, but not a great deal of experience in trying to fine tune. But let me tell you what little bit I know, and that is that while DNN offers a setting composite files that tries to combine some of those files together so that it delivers just one file, we don't support that option. So you'll find that if you try and turn that on, it will not always act as you expect. The logic that goes into building that and building a composite file that DNN does is complex, and I think it's possible to enable it, but with lots of care and testing. And just in general, we find that it doesn't, because of the conflicts between the theme and the things that we load and requiring a particular order, that, for example, with CSS, the order becomes important and things get loaded out of order. So you end up with not the control that you need. So short version of that is, when you're trying to hunt this down, composite files looks like it would be a solution for you, but probably will not work. And if you run into problems with that, we say to turn it off. With that, I've talked about this with Bogdan and the developer team. It doesn't save that much, because what happens is all those requests get cached. So even though it loads up the first time and has lots of files, and in subsequent calls, it's very fast. So the savings doesn't really justify the investment. That's been our finding. And so that's, I guess, more of a warning than a helpfulness. And then beyond that, individual efficiencies. Anybody have experience in successfully reducing some of that? It's not an area that I have worked. You have stumped our panel, Anthony.
Wow, that's all right then.
My experience from looking at a particular form that was slow, I did notice just what Dale was talking about. First time through, it does load slow, but then the following requests are seem to be grabbed from memory.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
for what it's worth.
So then I can also think that there's page design comes into it. That for example, if you have a page that has a lot of different components on it, and you're trying to make them all be available as pop-ups, and so they're on the page but hidden, and it's still active, that can be, is that the kind of circumstance that you're getting into? That
I've tried to, I'll put them as manual load, and then try to load them after a page load occurs, or load them when I need to load them, rather than loading them all at once.
And I'll let you know, you still, for me, you're cutting in and out, but I'm noticed is the did you have any success with any of that?
That does make a difference by manually loading things as you need it.
Well, you're still trying to get more.
Yeah, particularly on the mobile app, but I may need to modify the pages so there's not as much things on it.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of where I was going with that comment, that
Yeah,
perhaps making the page be more focused and using more pages it might be a technique just to get around it. But I think, I don't see that, for example, knowing what we have on our board, I don't see that there's going to be a major push for in any short term for reducing the weight of unused things, or finding efficiencies. It's all about providing I mean, you can, you know, the argument for you can do a lot with low code in a hurry. That you know, we're like I say, I just don't, not aware that there's going to be any push to be more efficient, less files anytime soon.
That's right.
Good question.
I did get that server requesting working.
I'm sorry.
I got that server request working that you took out the 401 and used a different code.
Yes. So what did you find as I did that the 401 unauthorized code was?
Yeah, as soon as I changed it at time. Yes, so as soon as I changed it to 400 or 200, it worked fine.
So just to recap, if for others that are maybe haven't been following along on that case, there was a question about you know, in our APIs module, you can provide a raw response, and one of the kinds of responses that you can provide, not only do you provide a payload, but you have a HTTP code that you're returning. Typically 200 means everything's a-okay, and but 401 means unauthorized. And what we were finding is that if you happen to choose 401, which is I think in Anthony's case, it was technically correct, 401 unauthorized. He was trying to log in and couldn't log in, but it was not returning a the payload portion was not part of what got returned in a 401. The HTTP handling of 401 precluded the payload from going. So he was trying to return a code and act on it with a nice message, and we aren't turning the message over. So if you're using a raw response and you actually want to get more than just the denial message 401, you should pick a different code, like I don't know, there's different HTTP codes. You can get a listing of those and find one that's more appropriate to you. But the just 401 has some special handling, whether it's on our side or within standard HTTP handling. I didn't get into that, but it was an issue. So sometimes those things, and it's I think it was a good example of a support case, and Anthony just provided a complete export of his API to me on the ticket. It was a good example that I was able to load it up and looking at it with different eyes. And I assume you see this all the time. It's like you're trying to explain something to somebody else, and once you see the solution, somebody else can see it where you can't. In this case, there was it was kind of bound up with authentication and an on error section, and it just kind of gets cloudy. But the end answer it was pretty simple. Our HTTP response, our raw response code, doesn't work well with the 401.
So a question then, Anthony, when you change the response from the the server, was that one obviously that you had control over, because that's a standard HTTP response? Is that correct?
Yes, I was trying to use the bearer code of token to pass into the Flutter app. But if you had a wrong username or password, then it just threw this error you couldn't do anything with. I wanted to be able to pass something back to say, oh, look, there's an error. So in the Flutter app, you know what was going on, and then provide a message to the user. If it came back the other way, you wouldn't know. And so I was trying to run the on error part and pass the values back. But as soon as we put it as 401, it just came back all weird. And that's why I got Dale involved, thinking was it an error with the server request, but it was more of as soon as you change the code, you can then pass back whatever you want in that JSON format. So then I could pass back saying, oh, well, your password was incorrect, or your incorrect your username wasn't spelt right, to make it a bit more meaningful for the mobile app.
I see. Thank you.
And I apologize here. I could have been bringing this up all along. Just to provide a visual of what we're doing here. So when you're working with an API, and one of the responses that you can add is an output called raw response, and there's an HTTP code. Putting a 401 here is the problem, that even the content, which might have included some JSON here, doesn't get passed back when it's a 401. You can pick any other code, and almost any other code, let's say, and you can get the response.
I was putting it into the on error part of the server request. So if your server requests through an error, because that's what happens if you don't have the right username password for that bearer token part of the DNN API, I was then able to use the on error to be able to pass that back in a more controlled fashion. And then I could put some logic to say which was the incorrect part back to the mobile app, and give a little bit more information back to a user.
So I'm just noticing that our response, let's see, like raw response. Yeah, okay, it's here. Raw response.
Yeah.
That was the one that you're trying to do. Yeah, so the server request was
So if you put a 401 in here, then
but I mean, in your case, you're doing it in the server request, but it really was anywhere, anytime that a raw response is used, and it's a 401. That and let's see what other. I assume, for example, you might run into the same thing with any of these others that accept an HTTP code, that I suspect you wouldn't get anything back if you used 401. Didn't test that, but I suspect that's the case. Good mystery, good solution. What else? First call.
Well, while we're on the subject of APIs, I posted a question about copying an existing API and then having the new having those two variables automatically inserted in there.
Yes.
Is that those I can just do? I wouldn't go and say that in public on a recording, but you did. Is that a feature?
You're too kind. No, that was a bug in our new UI. So, and I just have a ton of APIs here. It might take a minute to load, but let's see if it's going to come up. All right, here we got new view, new API, and so this is a. I'm going to go to automation and see if I can get a new job. APIs is a little sluggish in version 1.24 when you have a lot of APIs. And so I'm going to use automation, but it's our new interface that has a bug in it. So the server request action, when you do a server request, it defaults to try and show you, for example, that you might want to be able to pass variables through data, and it shows you the format that this is to happen. And in our old UI, it kind of showed you this, but it didn't actually save it, or if it did save it, if you decided that you wanted to eliminate it, you could just eliminate it like that. So it's an example that typically you just remove. I'm going to call this my Campfire job and try and save it, close it. Campfire test job, we edit it, and you'll just notice that the bug is that it comes back through the UI. So that I just want to demonstrate people on the call, people watching along, that this is exactly what the bug is. This information that should be removed comes back. So now if when you're trying to do some post, for example, or get to some other website, it's passing along this name and page information that it shouldn't, and it might be rejected by whatever API call you're making. So it's an annoyance with our new UI. It's on the list to be fixed. Your choices are to remember to eliminate these when you save an API. And unfortunately, that means every time you edit, you would have to eliminate these, or you can use our old UI until we get it fixed.
So maybe that explains something else, because I did exactly that. I wasn't aware that it was a bug necessarily in the new UI. So I deleted that. Then I went ahead with the rest of my API call, which didn't require any parameters. And when, I did deleted that, save and test, and then it came back with a message, something like an ID number is required or something to that effect. So I'm wondering if there was something lingering in the data field, even though I didn't think to go try the old UI. Obviously, that's a very good suggestion. But I'm wondering if that was something that was introduced in the data, looking for, some piece of information that I simply couldn't supply.
So the kind of insidious nature of this particular problem is that if you edit and remove this, I think it will save correctly. But if you edit your API and don't even open it, you don't even have to open this item up and look at this. If you're looking at something else and make another save, it's been reinitialized and has the content added back. So it's every time you edit it, basically the logic says if the data is blank, then fill it with values, and that's wrong logic. Once the data is blanked, it should never refill it, but it's treating it like it's a new item with these helpful suggestions that are just blowing up your API. So yeah,
Great, thank you.
absolutely.
I've got another question. I have a site where I've got I went ahead and installed all of the hot fixes. One of which was I'm pointing to this, I don't know that it is it, but there was an update to the skin itself. And what I'm experiencing is that the colors that I have chosen for the background work when I log in at, the existing ones that I changed it to work when I log in as, say, a super user. But when I test as an end user, it reverts to the kind of standard green colors. I attempted to change my colors, try to force it, to reset. And it affected my user, super user view, if you would, but the end user view never changed from this green color to something else. Does anybody know A, about that, and B, how to work around it?
Well, I'm guessing it's this one.
When was that released?
421.
I think-
Are you talking about you're on a 124 release?
Yep, 124, and I think I've got that installed.
Okay, and I don't, so it's kind of the perfect opportunity that we can test this out a little bit. So
Right.
if we go to our, I mean, for lack of anything else that we want to get into, it's a good report, and I'm happy to do this. So if we look at our home page, and we were at Plantain App Green here, that's trademarked, by the way, Plantain App Green. And I am logged in as a super user. So if I were to, and let's just verify here, if I go to go incognito, go to this page, this page is hidden. So let's start with security. Build a nice test here. Page settings, permissions, all users can view this page. So now when I go to this page, in my incognito session, we see Plantain App Green. If I change my color, where is this UI? We'll pick a nice, whatever that is. That's my primary color. And so we refresh. So as an administrator, it's saved it. And as a user, it flickers. It doesn't keep the color.
Mhm.
So we, even before this update has been installed, we're seeing it doesn't save for users. So let's go to our update and install it and see if that gives us any different behavior. So we'll install our page builder skin. I'm going to tap on the brain trust here. Patrick, if you are able to jump in, have you heard anything about this one? Know anything about
No.
admin versus user?
I haven't. I'm testing it also though.
It's kind of exciting to watch the bouncing icon here. All right, so it did install. We'll go to my preview page. Get our color selection. Incognito, we get a flicker and gone. Force refresh. I'm holding down the shift key, still don't get it. So there's this appears to be a bug, and we will report it.
Okay.
Had you used this on a previous version?
The changing colors and so on, yeah.
Yeah.
It works fine. It worked prior to this, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll give this a report.
While you're making notes on a different topic, just something that I found that I wasn't sure of, and perhaps others might not be as well. When you change a username in your users, in the Plantain App users, when you change the email address, it also changes everything, username, everything, which is good. That's wonderful. What I also found out was that in my case, I had a client distribute a login link and the email address was wrong. And when they changed when I had them test it, we changed an email address, and the old existing login link still worked, which was very good in this case. But just as an FYI for everyone.
Yeah, so a login link has properties like how long but I suspect it's ended up being tied to the user ID. We actually use this functionality here where we say impersonate user. We click this and you get a GUID type login, and with that you would be able to log in as me in the site, so everybody can quick use that URL to or as that particular user. But yeah,
is that what you mean by the login link? Just to make sure, Matt,
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah.
But in my case,
that's tied to a user ID. So if you change the username and you're not changing a user ID, so it's still the same account issue. You're just updating the username and email address.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure of that. So in my case, I had taken this create auto login link and exposed it to an administrative type user, and then turned off the capabilities of making it last 10 minutes and only using it once. So it's a quasi permanent link in that case. So that's why it was good to be able to have this continue to work. I do have a question about login links. At one of these parameters, and I'm not sure, with the login link, you have the option of, see, overwrite old link. Under what circumstances would you want to overwrite the old link?
Well, I think
write down.
I suspect just for the one that you were talking about, that if you issued somebody a kind of permanent link that could be used over and over again forever, and you want to revoke it, issuing another one for a lower validity period or one login would be a way to get rid of it, to decommission it.
Okay. So that would be essentially similar to unauthorizing a user, for example.
I'm guessing yes. I'm not seeing this, but
It's right. It's that checkbox right there.
Yeah.
Overwrite old, and this is actually, it's kind of one of these things in our user interface. Sometimes this indent gets me. New thing. Anyway, so checkbox. So any other links that were valid for that other user are no longer removed in favor of this one.
Good to know. Thanks.
Should we infer from that if you don't overwrite it, you can have multiple active links for a particular user?
If you don't set up the expiration, yeah, you could.
Okay.
Yeah, I have.
So in that case, then, assuming that's true, then you could have a couple of different login links attached to, say, redirects. One gets them to this page, one gets them to that page. Or if, for example, if I'm understanding it correct. Right.
Yeah, that's let's do this thing. Need to make sure I've got a good user here. So I'm going to do it for user number 33. And so this is going to be create login for 33. I'm going to say the expression is user 33. We're going to send them. I would have expected pages to load, wouldn't you, Patrick? We'll send them to the tests page.
I think, yeah, I'm not sure why it might be because it's in a workflow maybe, but I think that it wants, oh, or tab path. Okay, I was going to say that it wants a tab ID there, but it says or tab path. Okay.
And I'm just going to keep it simple. So we have this one that goes to tests, and we'll say 0 is unlimited, and we will say we'll end. Interesting. Oh, where's the calendar? Ah, there it is. We'll give it a week, and it's going to be, this is going to be the tests link. Test link, save. And so we're going to output that. But we'll also output a different one. So I am going to export this, copy it, and import it. And this one is also going to go there, but we will send them to the Low Code Café. So this is going to be the Low Code Café link. So we'll have two different ones going. And parameters. This is going to be the Café link. And we'll also output that. We get two links. And I didn't put the, oh, I guess I'll make it nice for myself. What would this be? Oh, I'll put see if that's better. Yeah, that's the whole thing. So we've got this link that ends in BD, this link that ends in 85. We go to incognito. The 85 one should take us to Cafe. And it didn't. And that's the same one. And that's the BD one. And they're both active. So that's so the answer is you can have multiple active for the same user. And I suspect my setup here was this, maybe we didn't need that path. Part of the path for the expression, see if that's correct. So test one of these. Nope. So I've got some issue going on that I'll have to figure out. That's another action item for us to deal with. Why doesn't the page selection from the create auto login link redirect to page? Why does that not work? I'll take that as an action item to look at.
It definitely works with the tab ID. Did you try? I'm sorry. Did you try that or?
No, I didn't try a tab ID. We would need to know what the tab ID is for that page, for a page.
You go to pages, just go to your pages menu there, and it's right there on the right, page ID.
43, so we could send one to 43 and one to 93. Taking a lot of care to figure out which is which here. Yeah, so that takes us to the cafe. And if we pick this other one, of course, I got them backwards. It takes us to test. So definitely works with tab ID. Doesn't there's some other secret sauce necessary than I did for finding a path. So I'll explore that one a little bit more. So all about create auto login link.
So if you run that with an overwrite on one of those, does it invalidate all the others?
Good question. So we will do that. Overwrite old link and save. And I'm going to do it for both. Overwrite, save, and test. I'm going to run it, but I'm not going to use either of those that are created. I'm going to go back and try and use one that we had. Doesn't look like it, does it? So that ends in 4B and A6. Completely different link. Didn't disable it. Jim, your question was impertinent, or perhaps a very good one. Overwrite old link. Does that look like, did you see anything flawed in my testing?
Only that you still had the same incognito session open.
Yeah, that's the only thing I was going to say too. But still, the link is redirecting, so you would think that. And yeah, but
I don't think I had an incognito. Tell you what, we'll bring fire.
Let's go to a whole new browser.
Be caching here. Yeah, doesn't look like it's getting rid of the overwrite. So we need to action item to determine what the overwrite old link does in the create auto login link action. If it seems like I'm talking to myself, I am. We're processing these with AI now, and so it'll bring action items for me out of the transcript. So I'm being lazy. We're taking advantage of the AI.
We're smart.
Yeah. Smarter, not harder. All right. Any other variations that we want to test? Good questions, though. I'll have answers next week. Well, I'll try.
Just a side note from an earlier topic. I tested the page builder scenario on my site and it worked correctly. But I've got page builder 124.04. So evidently that was something that changed after that. Just a side note.
124.04, and let's see what one that I put in here.
12409, I think, is
Uh-huh.
the latest.
So something perhaps that we broke in one of those later ones. Patrick, are you in a spot where you can install that hotfix and see if it ends up breaking it?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, if you find out that would be good too. All right. Yeah. So I'm gonna plug a little bit. Low Code Cafe coming up on this next Wednesday. We're gonna have a focus on artificial intelligence. And actually the next two Low Code Cafes are going to have that same focus, but in this one, we will be having guest presenter Mark Roberts, and he's going to walk us through integrating with OpenAI and just using our server request actions and show, I guess this would be another integrate anything, being able to talk to and leverage any other tool, and in this case, it's artificial intelligence. Ought to be an interesting session and a nice example of integration and getting great benefit. But again, I want to, I'll go on from there. We'll be talking some during that episode about some of our plans for product offerings from Plant and App on artificial intelligence, and I think that will be useful. And then the one 2 weeks out, we'll actually be making our full product announcements, and so you won't want to miss that one either. So lots of good things going on within Plant and App on artificial intelligence. I think you'll see some nice demos and get a real good handle on how this can impact you. Ben, I don't know if you happen to notice, but you asked a question about Razor scripting and you got a pretty detailed answer from me, and I don't know anything about Razor scripting, so I'm not claiming authorship on that one.
It's funny because before you posted that, I basically went in a similar route. Ended up that the only way I could obtain that information is through using what's known as reflection, which is very similar to what you were posting. And through using reflection, I was able to get a actual list of the fields that were returned from the result set of another token that was being consumed. So I actually put in the community feature request, if maybe in a future iteration, the list of field names could be returned as a sub property to that dynamic object as like a string array, that we could just utilize that as opposed to having to be forced to use reflection.
I think that's an interesting feature request. It's the whole thing about low code is to make it easy to use to consume those things without having to go to a bunch of effort, and that would certainly reveal it and make it simple to use. So good point.
Yeah, I never needed to use it until just recently, because now I'm writing some dynamic exports, and it's able to run a SQL query, which will return results, but the results will be different based off of the parameters put in. So I'll get different fields, and I'm taking that result set and writing it out to a file. But in order to do that, I need to know how many fields I have and what the field names are, so that I can basically call on them to pull the data to write to the file. And that's why I need to traverse through each of the field names.
Makes sense.
I hate hard coding.
So I'm going to I guess impose or ask politely, but we are in need of adding a few new use cases, things to talk about what our clients are using Plantin app to do. And if you'd be willing to spend 15 minutes with me and tell me what it is that you've built, and maybe get a screenshot of a key piece of the application, but just tell us what you built, how it impacts your business, what the use case is. It would help me substantially. So anyone who can give me 15 minutes today, it would be much appreciated. And I say today, Bogdan is traveling to the United States. We're going to a conference called Select USA in Washington, D.C. I'm going along. And so we want to just to bolster and show the great work that is being done by Plantin app. And then there's also the social aspect. That'll probably be the most amount of time I've gotten to spend with Bogdan over these next couple of weeks. And so us getting to know each other beyond Zoom, it'll be awfully nice. And then I think Patrick is going to have the opportunity to be host for Bogdan as well.
Yes, and I think that maybe all three of us will get together for dinner one night too.
Well, that would be terrific. I hadn't heard that. I would love that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the perils of being in a virtual company. We aside from having gone to the team retreat in last fall, we have never met any of these people. Just work with them every day. Good. All right. Any other things that are going on that we should talk about today? All right. I think that's a good spot to call it then. That's all that I have prepared. So in which case I am going to say happy low coding. Thank you for joining us and for spending the hour with us. Hope you got something out of it. I'm sorry, I'm going to back up. I was looking through the attendee list, and I at least want to put out the call. There is a case on the community that two different clients have encountered in this most recent time period. This one, annoying. Forms and grids no longer displaying on the website. So two people, Albert and Andreas, both encountered the same thing in roughly the same time period. And it's one of these things when something happens spontaneously in a application, going along, application works as it's supposed to, no changes to the site in theory, and no known changes to the site, and yet things start acting differently. So a little bit of a mystery what changed, whether it's at the IS level, at the server level, I don't know. But first of all, if anybody else is experiencing forms and grids that are spontaneously not displaying, I'd love to hear about those cases. Able to add that to the stack of knowledge and try and figure out what's going on. But if anybody has any ideas about what may be going on this one, I'd invite you to jump in and help us out.
Dale, a couple of things real quick. First of all, I am using the thumbnail creator quite successfully, and it's excellent. If anybody has a opportunity to, definitely check that out. That's on the Plantin app contributions. The question I had could you give me a quick walkthrough on the web config tools get DLLs as JSON?
Sure.
Is this to do something, or is this just a demonstration?
Get DLLs as JSON. So the idea was that it was really a razor script exercise that I was doing that showed that that you could use Razor to parse through and pull information from an external file like web config. In my case, I was using it to I pulled out DLLs, and those returned as JSON, and then I threw that JSON into a listing. So it kind of illustrates a lot of things that you can parse through a file and get things out of it, and that you can consume a JSON with a listing. A listing can consume JSON as a data source. And then in my case, you know, I found that this same DLL is listed 27 times in my web config, which probably is not what we want. I would assume that every web config should list it typically once. So these two DLLs look like something that need administrative attention on our part in this particular server to have the web config be right. So that's why I did it.
So if you, I've experienced some DLL issues with when using Too Sexy, and that's what caught my eye here. You don't seem to be able to, or you're not pulling back the DLL version numbers for the most part.
Yeah, I don't know about. Yep. So some of them do, some of them don't. I think these ones. Okay, so these there's more information that we could pull back that you could modify the Razor script. I mean, anything that's in the web config you could now use to pull. I just grabbed you know, some piece of the version that was listed, and apparently whatever I was using in a lot of the Plantain app things, we don't specify that particular parameter. So this was not the version that was off the file. This was the version that the web config is calling for.
Got it.
And we're not calling for it by version versus other pieces are calling for it by version. I strongly suspect that you could use Razor to investigate what DLL is actually installed and get the version back and do some comparison, but that's far more advanced than I was trying to go. But yeah, Too Sexy, the way that the way that versions are declared in the web config, where they target from version 0 to version 32,000, essentially saying any call to this DLL should go to the DLL that they provided, it overwrites calls that we do to say for this particular version we need this particular DLL, and so that's kind of the underlying conflict with Too Sexy. And not that you asked, I'm just explaining as we go. So
oh no, I'm very interested.
Yeah, this would be the beginning of a tool that might help find those things and fix those things. But I was in my case, I was really just looking for are there duplicates? The other one that was you know, and so I suspect we have something in our installer that, or in our updater, that is somehow adding a new entry to this particular one instead of updating the entry in web config. And so that'll be another action item to try and find out why this DLL is being updated in the web config. And then I don't know if you saw the other one, but kind of a related one. There was a ton of comments and in the web config that the DNN installer or updater automatically leaves. It comments out old DLL dependent assemblies and leaves them, so that it just grows and grows and grows. So this tool shows how to remove them in bulk rather than by hand.
Mhm.
Okay.
But it doesn't actually change the web config, it just gives you a new iteration of it for comparison.
Correct. Yeah, and you could, in theory, you could check it out, use it, and you're good to go. But yeah, the Razor does not actually neither of these modify the actual web config.
Thank you. Very handy.
Good. All right. Great. Thank you all for spending your hour with us. We're going to adjourn into Afterglow here in just a moment. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.